Can a boss fire an employee he finds attractive because he and his wife see her as a threat to their marriage? Yes, according to the Iowa Supreme Court. The case centers around Melissa Nelson and her employment as a dental assistant. So listen closely. Nelson worked for dentist James Knight for more than 10 years. But near the end of her employment, she was told her clothing was tight and distracting. Melissa Nelson and her attorney, Paige Fielder, are joining me now by phone. So, Ms. Nelson, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Okay, you said it's been an interesting couple of years, a tough couple of years, but you worked there for 10 years. So what changed?
I have no idea. I thought everything was still the same. I went to work the same as I did every day. Worked hard, enjoyed my job, and one day it just came to a screeching halt.
Okay. So what was your relationship? Did you have a relationship with your boss other than a professional one?
I would say probably we had more of a relationship, but I also had a relationship with the rest of his family, and so did he with me.
But, I mean, you weren't having an affair with your boss?
Absolutely not. I am happily married.
Okay. And so the court said in its decision that it may be unfair, but it's not unlawful. How do you feel about that?
It's tough. I really struggle with it yet. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's right.
What does your husband say about it?
He doesn't like it. He had an appointment with him and Dr. Knight and agreed that it's not fair. They believe it was the best interest for everybody. Our side of it, we disagree. I enjoyed my job.
It sounds to me like you're crying right now. Are you?
I'm okay right now. The last couple of days have just been an emotional roller coaster. I'm trying to stay strong. Tough.
You were a dental assistant, which, was a good job. You had that job for 10 years, and now to make ends meet, I understand you had to take a restaurant job, and you're taking a break from that job just to do this interview with us?
I am working. I currently work 6 nights a week. Also helping out in the school, for my kids' school, as needed there as well.
Yeah. Do you think, he said, your clothing was too tight and all of that stuff. Did you wear tight clothing or short skirts or tight sweaters or anything, low-cut blouses?
I wore scrubs. I worked in scrubs. I wore a long sleeve or short sleeve T-shirt, and I wore scrubs.
I want to talk to the attorney here. Are you going to appeal this ruling?
One problem that we have is we filed this case under Iowa law only, and the Iowa Supreme Court is the final authority of what Iowa law says, and they've carved out an exception. Normally, if a worker's sex plays a part in the decision to fire her, then it's illegal sex discrimination. But the court carved out an exception saying as long as the dentist was motivated by some sexual desire for Melissa in particular, then it doesn't have anything to do with her sex, and it's not illegal in Iowa.
It's interesting because as I have been telling this story, I've had people, and I thought the same thing, people reaching out to me on social media saying, a man would never be fired for being too attractive from a job. So you don't see any discrimination in that? I mean, do you think that's true?
Well, of course it's true. Maybe not never, but I can't imagine the situation. And yet women every day in the workplace go through situations where they're either too attractive or they're not attractive enough for some particular man. And we understand that is sex discrimination. Part of what's worrisome to me or disturbing to me is that the Iowa Supreme Court is made up of 7 men. And perhaps they just simply don't understand that this is the kind of discrimination that occurs in today's workplace.
Here's the thing. I'm going to ask this question quickly, and I have one more question for you. The court was the one who called you irresistible, called you an irresistible attraction. Do you think that you're irresistible?
No, I do not. I consider myself to be just an ordinary girl, living an ordinary life, ordinary kids. Actually, they're pretty special, but I'm just an everyday girl. I'm just a normal working mom.
Okay, if I can offer a piece of advice to you. Your attorney says you're not going to sue and all this. In a situation like this, there's always a way to turn it around and to use it for your own good. You have the power of the media now. Lots of people are writing about it. You could write a book. You can become an advocate for women and discrimination and all of that. Have you thought about that, turning this negative, perceived negative, into a positive, which would be, I think, the best reaction to it?
You know, it has been awfully negative, and I do hope that if something positive doesn't come out of this for me, that it will for somebody else.
Yeah.
I hope that nobody else has to experience or go through and live what I've had to live with.
Yeah. That's the power right there, what you just said, because whether or not the courts agree with you, you still have your own fate is in your hands, and you can turn it into a positive. And I hope you do, for your sake and for your families. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Right. Other news now. The men and women we elect to serve us in Washington can't seem to agree on anything, and now another divisive issue is headed to Capitol Hill. Story from Washington straight ahead. Okay, we talked earlier this hour with Melissa Nelson, who was fired from her job for being an irresistible attraction. That was ruling yesterday of the Iowa Supreme Court. And we just received a statement from the attorney for her former boss. Okay, listen very closely. Here it is. Without dispute, Mrs. Nelson was not fired because she is a woman. Our civil rights laws and all other laws are not intended to create a remedy for every slight or perceived injustice. Dr. Knight fired her to preserve not only his marriage, but also out of respect for the Nelsons' marriage. I understand the spin on this will be that she was fired solely because Dr. Knight found her attractive, but the reality is that he repeatedly directed her to dress and behave in an appropriate way, and she chose not to. He responded in the way that his ministers and wife felt was necessary to protect the sanctity of his marriage and hers. Bottom line is she was not fired because she is a woman. He has never employed anyone other than women in his practice. Dr. Knight chose to favor the wishes of his wife and to end Mrs. Nelson's employment. His decision was both the legal and morally just thing to do.